I would say that probably $10 billion would completely upset everything. It would force the closure of COMEX, force the closure of LME, and then there'd be all kinds of blood in the water, and you'd have everybody trying to get in. The available silver would probably be cleaned up in anywhere from, 2 days, 3 days, maybe as long as 5 days.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for November 4th through November 11th, 2024, while supplies last. This week we feature the 2024 1-ounce gold UK Lion and Eagle coin, a highly limited release, available at just $99 over spot. We also have backdated silver 1-ounce Britannia at just $2.99 over spot per ounce. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're always delighted to have this widely followed returning guest. Bill Holter is a former Wall Street branch manager, as well as a well-studied student of all markets and an expert in bullion. He joins us this Monday, November 4th, 2024. Bill, thanks for coming back on Liberty and Finance.
Thank you for having me done again.
With your permission, we'd like to field a bunch of viewers' questions that were submitted ahead of your arrival here. People look to you, as I've mentioned in the past, because you've got your head screwed on straight, you've got your boots on the ground, and you call them like you see them. And that's a rare commodity these days. People appreciate it. One of the things that people have been scratching their heads about for a long time is our runaway debts and deficits that seem to be defying logic, defying the rules of mathematics and common sense and accounting and everything else. Cheap Laugh Kennedy 2318 says, how much farther can the debt expansion continue with the furthering loss of purchasing power continue without a systemic collapse?
I guess I'm going to start by saying not very far, especially if interest rates stay where they are or go higher. This fiscal year that just started, we're only a month into the fiscal year for the federal government. They're going to pay probably 1.5 or 1.6 trillion in interest only. We're probably going to run another 2 trillion plus deficit this year. And if interest rates go higher, we'll be at 2 trillion easily the following year. If you're taking in 4.5 trillion in tax revenues and you're paying 2 trillion out in interest expense, that should answer your question right there. You're at a point where interest expense is 40% of revenue. That's not even, that's completely not sustainable. But I would suspect that you would see the BRICS stepping in and saying, that's it, we're out. We're not using dollars. Here's your dollars. And I think what you're going to see is a lot of those dollars are going to come back here to the United States and buy stuff up. And those dollars that are being sold by foreign central banks, foreign sovereign wealth funds, a lot of that's going to go into gold and silver because they still want to hold money, but they don't want money that's going to debase. So I would just say you're watching the unsustainability happen right before your eyes.
Related to that, Brian Canis asks, you talk about getting assets out of the banking system, but where do you put them where it's safe once they're out?
We've talked about this 1,000 times. Your alternative to being in the system is getting your capital out of the system into gold, into silver. Those are monies that cannot bankrupt, and in your hand, they can't be bailed in.
In addition to cold hard cash that you're describing, gold and silver, what are your opinions about people buying either ranch land or productive farmland or other assets that are likely to sustain of necessity in tough times?
I'm just going to group that into real estate. And with real estate, you're going to see properties get taxed away from owners. in this downturn, just like happened in the Great Depression. And that sounds nice, productive farmland. The only problem is they don't. If you pay asking price on farmland right now, you're paying well in excess of what the production from that property is going to sustain. So that is a speculative bubble, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. With farmland. The only thing that I do see wrong with it is the price that you have to pay for it right now. I mean, why would you not own gold and silver, which are suppressed and will go through a short squeeze and will revalue much, much higher at the same time that real estate prices are going to collapse? All real estate is going to collapse in value. It was held up. The reason prices are where they are is because credit has been available. Once credit is not available, you're going to see those property values or prices drop like a stone. I mean, just look at commercial real estate. There's your roadmap to farmland, to housing, to you name it in the real estate sector.
Okay, as long as we're on that particular topic, this is a very specific case, but I happen to know that among our viewers and subscribers, this is not that uncommon. Lady Bayless 1530 says, I know it's too early to predict, but I have a housing construction question. My husband and I sold our house back in 2022. We knew we wouldn't be building for a while. We bought new land, added water and power. We put up an RV port, moved into a fifth wheel. We added a shed for more storage and thought we might be able to build the house in 2025. We have no debt. We have protected our wealth by purchasing gold and silver. Assuming Trump wins and he improves the economy, is the fall of 2025 or spring of 2026 too soon to be expecting that we may be able to build?
I don't know why you wouldn't be able to build today, next year, 2026, other than the fact that at some point in time, the economy is going to go down and you will not be able to you're not going to be able to get the supplies to build a house at some point in time. I don't know why, if you have the land ready to build on it, why aren't you building on it now?
Well, it might be related to what you were just describing as far as the anticipating that the value of their nest egg in metals is going to increase proportionally and the cost of materials might crash if the economy crashes or whatever, but that's hard to say.
Yeah, that's speculating. I mean, certainly I think the price of gold and silver are going to be revalued higher versus other stuff. And construction supplies are, other stuff. The one thing I would say is I personally would not start building right now because I would not want to be in a situation where I'm a quarter built or half built or 85% built and the system comes down and you're in limbo. You can't do that. I mean, you got to have your feet on the ground. You need to not have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You need to have both feet on the ground and move to wherever your location is, and do that quickly. You don't want to get caught between. You don't want to be caught between places. Put it that way.
That's been a real challenge for a lot of our viewers and subscribers that have been asking me. I'm sure you have others that are consulting with you, asking you, trying to make the moves they need to make either financially or strategic relocation or logistically or whatever in their life, anticipating there may be a precipice where we suddenly find ourselves in a lot more civil unrest, et cetera. And this being, we're going to be broadcasting this on election day. So there's a lot of anticipation that there may be significant civil unrest or other difficulties immediately following the election. So that's been a difficult challenge for people to anticipate when will be a stable enough time that they can do that transition, which moving or building always does require. Any further thoughts on that before we dig in?
Yeah, I'm somewhat familiar with that because as soon as COVID had not hit here in the United States, but I knew that it was happening in China and had cases in Toronto. I knew it was going to spread. And my thought process at that point was, They were going to use COVID to take the system down. I was mistaken in that. They basically used COVID for mail-in ballots and basically a coup, to take over power in the United States. But at that point in time, I told my wife, because we lived rural, but it was a rural neighborhood, if you will. It was a gated community. And when you've got 300 houses behind fence, you don't know who friend or foe is. And I told my wife, I said, we need to get out. We need to get out now. So we, just as COVID started, I bought a very rural piece of property that had tons of infrastructure, but everything needed to be repaired. The place was 17 years old, but everything was here. I mean, a pond, 2 water wells, greenhouses. I mean, the infrastructure was here, but it all needed to be repaired. And my fear was not being able to get supplies. And actually, it turned out, I mentioned I've got 2 water wells. I wanted to put in a hand pump. I put in solar, but I wanted a hand pump. If we have an EMP, then the panels don't work, and then I'm going to generators. And I'm thinking, I need a hand pump for water. If you don't have water, you're done. And it took me 9 months to get that hand pump. And I mean, everybody was doing the same thing. I bought extra freezers, but they took time to get here. So yeah, I'm familiar with that thought process. You just go as fast as you can, and you buy things. For instance, I mean, I changed out the air conditioners on 4 different buildings, and what I did at that time, and this took about 3 months to procure, but I bought the parts to repair 2 air conditioners. So I've got, I have 2 systems ready to go in storage, because I figured I can always get labor. I can't always get the parts, get the stuff, just because they're not available or what have you. So yeah, I mean, the thought process, you do have some sleepless nights, because I was worried that, we got here, so much stuff needed to be done, and we worked at it really, really hard. It took almost a year to get the whole thing done. And actually, it was kind of a blessing to be doing this while everybody else was running around in town, with a bunch of masks on, and I didn't have to see the nonsense. I mean, just as an aside, even to this day, you still see masks, and you still see idiots driving in their car by themselves with a mask on. So I mean, it kind of was a blessing to be occupied while everybody else was freaked out about something. I had a purpose at that point.
I think that's very practical. It's also very psychologically healthy to be able to take action, to take purposeful action at a time when we're faced with a real risk, a real challenge, rather than just sit there wringing your hands and watching, as some people did, 7x24, the coverage saying, case counts and death counts and all this stuff going up and up, because it was so fear-inducing and demoralizing and disempowering for many people, rather than people who just got down and did what needed to be done at that time. So good for you for...
Yeah, it was total gaslighting. It was total misinformation. It was done on purpose. And if you don't see that, then I'm sorry, nobody can help you except for yourself.
Now, we've mentioned a couple times, even in the last few minutes here, about how there's an expectation that when the public wakes up and tries to crowd into gold and silver, there's likely to be a momentum overshoot, or at least a accelerated ramp up in nominal price beyond just kind of keeping up with inflation, because it's a small market and people try to crowd in. That's happened before. It's not the first time. Question here from A. Phillips, 1987. What exactly happened back in 2011 to propel silver to $49? You were paying a lot of attention back then. Can you kind of walk us through the key elements?
Yeah, that that I think that situation exists again today. There were many multiples of paper contracts that had been sold short that had previously suppressed the price, and those needed to be covered. I forget who it was, and I think it was, it might have been Bank of America, it might have been JP Morgan, I forget who it was that was really short. After the, I actually think it was JP Morgan because they absorbed Bear Stearns, and I think Lehman was also short, but Bear Stearns was the big silver short. So those had to be covered, and that was basically a short covering operation. You have that same thing today. I believe Bank America is the big short, and uh, but this is way bigger than back then. I mean, to see it move to $50, and that would be it. That would be, I'd be shocked if that were to happen. We've got, from what I understand, there's 406 paper ounces now for every 1 real ounce that exists. So there's gasoline for the short squeeze fire. You also have, isn't it interesting that Saudi Arabia did not, from what I understand, they did not attend the BRICS meeting. And I think the reason being they're sitting on what, 600 or 800 billion dollars worth of treasuries, and they don't want to see the same thing happen to their treasuries that happened to the Russian treasuries, the 300 plus billion that were sequestered, stolen, whatever you want to call it. That's $800 billion that could move into metal. I just posted an article yesterday or the day before showing the amount of the volume on the Shanghai exchange. The volume has just exploded in the last month or two. And if you're not familiar with the thought process of the Chinese, I'll just say that there is no gold bull market like a Chinese gold bull market. They are speculators at heart, and they will chase price. So there's another can of gasoline. India has been a huge importer. That's another can of gasoline. And then after that, in the West, we're going to have banking problems. We're starting to have rumblings again in the repo market. I mean, you're talking about literally trillions of dollars that are going to move into gold and silver. And that's like trying to put Niagara Falls through a garden hose. You can't do it. But the price is going to explode, and it will be real raw buying. But the real fun is going to be watching the shorts get squeezed because they're going to be forced to cover.
Yeah, we've had Ed Steer, a longtime associate of Ted Butler, on our show a few times, and he keeps bringing back the updated version of the analysis chart that he has that show the concentrated short position record in history, and absolutely beyond the rules of the COMEX, and yet ignored by the regulators there at the COMEX, the CFTC, et cetera. This concentrated short position that is exactly what you have described. It's rocket fuel once it goes too far. Once the momentum from various sources, and you just rattled off half a dozen different sources of potential momentum that could be brought to bear and are already starting. There's been some talk about how Russia recently announced, after having announced about 2 months ago and then 1 month ago gold purchases, now they just announced silver purchases as well. Any comments from you on that?
Yeah, well, that's huge. I mean, hey, when you use the term marginal buyer, it's a buyer on the margin, but Russia by no means is a marginal buyer. I mean, they could step up and easily put, $50, $100 million a month. And in the very first month, there'd be a failure to deliver, and all available gold and silver for sale today would not be for sale tomorrow. That would all go into hiding. So, yeah, that's another huge buyer. And I just want to say that, there is this concentrated short position in silver, and that's been used to manage the price. But you have to be absolutely insane or suicidal to want to short silver at these levels. We've broken over the 3250 level. There's really nothing technically between here and 50. 50 breaks, and then there is no technical area to stop it. And it's a crowded trade. I mean, it is a concentrated short that at some point in time has got to be covered. Do they really believe they're going to be able to cover it at 25 or 20 or 15? No, they're going to be forced to cover. And it could be, you could wake up, we'll go through a period of time where you see silver move $1, $2 a day, and then you're going to see $5 and $10 moves. Then all of a sudden you're going to start seeing $50 and $100 moves. And I'm talking about silver now, I'm not talking about gold. And I think you're going to start seeing $200 day moves in gold. It's a function of shorts being forced to buy because they get a margin call. And I mean, you've got to be suicidal to want to short silver, which is the cheapest asset on the planet.
And related to this, then, you just mentioned potentially Russia or others that could come in and step in as major buyers. I wanted to ask a viewer's question about that and then expand briefly on it. Ed B. Guitar 52 says, do you think some country or wealthy individual might buy all the available silver for $30 billion and watch an immediate rally to the real price? And I'll tag on to that is that we've got all these insurance companies, endowment managers, trust funds for universities and all over the place, hedge funds that are underexposed to precious metals or have no exposure whatsoever, are totally for the last 40 years have been totally in the stock market and the bond market, both of which are struggling. How many of those are going to get a chance to move into physical precious metal ownership before the shelves will be bare and there's just nothing to be had? So both of those questions are part of the same.
Yeah, to start, $30 billion, that's like dreamland. There's no way a $30 billion order could be filled. You're talking about 1 billion ounces. There is no store of 1 billion ounces anywhere on the planet to be delivered. I would say that probably $10 billion would completely upset everything. It would force the closure of COMEX, force the closure of LME, and then there'd be all kinds of blood in the water, and you'd have everybody trying to get in. The available silver would probably be cleaned up in anywhere from, 2 days, 3 days, maybe as long as 5 days. But to answer your question on hedge funds, unless they're already looking at this, unless they're already considering buying gold and silver and getting the logistics in line, there's no way when this thing snaps, these hedge funds, they're going to be left out because there won't be any gold, there won't be any silver for them to buy at any price.
A question here from Bill M. in Florida. A lot of our viewers and subscribers, and I'm sure a lot of your clients as well, are trying to come up with a strategy for where to hold their gold or silver. Some want it entirely under their own protection. Some want not all of it into their own protection, depending what their living situation is. Bill asks you to please talk more about storage. Can you talk about the trade-offs that you see there and what people need to be very careful about?
Yeah, I recommend that people hold all their gold unless you're talking about, a $25 or $50 million, big, huge, humongous order. Gold is easy to store. 1,000 ounces now is 2.7 million. And 1,000 ounces is basically just 2 monster boxes, and it's pretty easy to hide 2 monster boxes. The problem for storage is with silver, because it's so cheap, you get so much metal. I think if you can store, 10,000, 20,000 ounces, then by all means, keep it on hand. Otherwise, store it in a non-bank private vault. And one of the vaults that we work with at Miles Franklin is Dakota Depository in North Dakota. And one advantage there is Miles Franklin does hold inventory there, so there wouldn't be no shipping charges if you wanted to turn around and liquidate. But I think the biggest draw is that North Dakota is the only state in the country that's not part of the Federal Reserve System. So theoretically, you could not have a federal agent walk in and say, tell us who your customers are and what they own.
Yeah, it's interesting. On Dakota Depository's website, they have a position statement about their unwillingness to comply with unconstitutional directives that come. It's pretty encouraging to see the stance that they've taken to say that they're going to stand up for their clients' privacy and property rights. Any comments from you on people wanting to protect their privacy and their property rights when owning gold and silver? Just maybe top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tips that do this, don't do that, as people, because a lot of people are absolutely new to this. It's absolutely unfamiliar. They or their parents or sometimes their grandparents have never owned personal gold and silver, and they're dipping their toe in the water for the first time. They want to do it carefully and do it right.
I wouldn't be too concerned about it, because even if the government knows that you bought X amount of gold and X amount of silver, there's no way they're ever going to go door to door, because the very first day they did that, there would be 1,000 deaths. I mean, a lot of people who have bought gold or bought silver, they own guns. They have lead. So I don't think there will ever be a day where they go door to door. It'd be more likely that they pass a law saying either with a huge tax on the back end, or they make it illegal and there's a fine and a jail time or whatever if you're caught with it. But just like in 1933, a lot of people held on to that metal, and it's still within families, almost 100 years later. One thing not to do, and I've had probably a half a dozen or more people just in the last 6 months to a year ask me, okay, well, I want to buy $100,000 in metal, but I'm going to do it in 11 transactions so that every transaction's under $10,000. And no, you don't want to do that. That on its own raises a red flag. It looks like you're trying to launder money. Just do it with a check, do it with a wire. I mean, if you think that the government doesn't see an $8,000 check versus a $10,000 check, they basically see everything. And if they want, I mean, if they see 11 transactions all under $10,000, they're going to look into you, and they'll see, they will see each transaction. So don't do that. There's no need to do that. And if you do that, it's you may be creating problems for yourself.
Besides the fact that there's just a confusion about that $10,000 number, is somehow that got ingrained in the consciousness of many Americans that you want to avoid that for privacy reasons. And what most people don't understand is that's a cash transaction reporting limit. And it has nothing to do with precious metals. You could, as Andy has sometimes said on our channel, you're going to buy golf gear or buy a motorcycle or just deposit money in your bank account. $10,000 is a cash transaction reporting limit. It has nothing to do with precious metals. Okay. This is an interesting question, because you have been a strong advocate for U.S. mint lineage coinage, including junk silver, dimes, quarters, half dollars, and silver dollars. Patriot Fighter 331 says, if we go back onto a gold and silver standard, how much more of a premium would you think constitutional silver has over generic silvers, such as eagles versus buffaloes, as an example?
That question assumes that the system is going to remain up and running, and I think that's a bad assumption. The reason you want to own junk silver is, here are the 4 or 5 main reasons. It's readily recognizable. Everybody knows what a dime or quarter looks like. You can look on the coin to see the date. As long as it's 1964 or earlier, it verifies that it's real. You could drop a dime or quarter on the counter. It sounds different than current dimes and quarters. You can flip it on its side. You won't see the orange. You won't see
there's no copper showing. Yeah, right.
There's no copper in the middle. Exactly. It is U.S. mint lineage. It's not counterfeitable. And when I say not counterfeitable, if you hold those coins back up, Dunnigan, they all look scruffy. They all look used. They came out of somebody's pocket. They circulated for years.
They all have slightly different amounts of wear on them. There are no two that are similar. They're all slightly different. Yep. Because they're real, by golly.
If somebody counterfeited those, they would be bright and shiny. And if somebody ever tries to give you a junk quarter or a junk dime that's bright and shiny, the odds are it's not real. Because like looking at that bag, they have to look like they've been used. And the most important reason why you want junk silver is because they are the smallest denomination of silver. And in a system breakdown, if we do go through a barter period of time, which I believe we will, $1.38 contains 1 ounce. That's 14 dimes, basically. That means you've got 14 transactions versus 1, with whether it be an eagle, a maple, a bar, a generic round, or whatever. It's the smallest denomination. And it happens right now that junk is about the cheapest form of silver that you can buy. And at a later date, in my opinion, junk is going to be in the most demand of any form of silver because of what the 4 or 5 reasons I just mentioned, and especially because they're the smallest denomination. I mean, if you want a dozen eggs from a farmer and you go with a silver eagle, yeah, the guy will accept it, but you're not going to get change back. Whereas you could go with a silver dime and trade that for a dozen eggs and you're square. Nobody owes anybody.
Yeah, that idea of assuming that people are going to be able to make change when we're operating in an era where you are trading things of real value for other things of real value, you want to minimize the friction. I mean, anytime you're in a stressful situation or where there's societal unrest or there's lack of trust or whatever, you want to make things as easy. It's going to be hard enough. You want to make things as easy as possible on yourself, avoiding complications and making change is one of those. Other things, at Walkman says, things to keep in mind when buying junk silver. Any further tips when you're buying junk silver that people need to be aware of?
Yeah, I've had a lot of buyers that say, I prefer $half or I prefer silver dollars. Well, you're going to pay a premium for those. And B, if you're buying, pre-1964 silver, why not all dimes? Dimes are the best, and dimes and quarters are the cheapest.
Yeah, one of the things that I think people like about half dollars or silver dollars is, again, they stand out because they're no longer common. So people would look at them and go, oh, there's something special there. When this is, here's a silver dollar. And when people see that in front of them, they go, whoa, 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 this is something special. They're not going to think it's just pocket change, which is, that's the other reason I like mercury dimes is because, most people our age still remember when we could see some of those and they haven't seen them in a long time, but they recognize them as real, but they are more useful from a small size standpoint. That's what you were talking about earlier, more transactions. All right. And any advice to you about people who are going to be traveling internationally? There's a couple questions about the people who want to take, for example, gold with them when traveling outside the U.S., if they're relocating strategically to another country. Any words to the wise about how to do that in the smart way so that you don't run into the worst situations where either you end up in trouble or you end up losing those metals as you go across borders internationally?
Well, I'm a good one to ask because I've done it. I mean, I moved to Costa Rica in 2006. I moved back in 2011. I traveled not only to Costa Rica with metal, and when I came back with metal, but I also traveled to Switzerland to deposit metal because I wanted it out of the United States. Just follow what the laws are. Make sure that you do declare what you have. If you have gold eagles, those are only $50 a piece because it's stated on the coin $50. So you could go with 199 of those, not declare them and not have a problem. But make sure you don't have more than $50 cash in your pocket, because if you do, they're going to take your stuff. I would just say make sure you declare when you leave, declare when you enter, and then if you turn around and come back from there, declare when you leave and declare when you enter. It's not illegal in any way, shape, or form, but not declaring it is illegal.
There's been some controversy around that point that you raised about declaring gold legal tender coins at face value versus at market value. Andy Schechtman, the CEO of Miles Franklin, has talked about his personal story of traveling from Canada to the U.S. with a a briefcase full of Canadian gold maples and got through customs with some, I would say, a bit of headache.
They asked questions, but they were not versed. And I mean, I know this story because I've talked to Andy and we've talked about this. They were not versed in their own laws. Andy basically schooled them on their laws. And $50 Canadian is only really $37.50 or thereabouts, or maybe even less, in US dollars. So you could actually travel with more than 199 of those because it's under the $10,000 US limit.
Bill, you write and produce videos now. You've started your own website at billholter.com. Any place in addition to billholter.com that people should go to keep tabs on your latest analysis, your latest opinions that you put out on this of the state of affairs that we're in right now?
Yeah, no, really, just go to my website. And I've had people ask, where can I find your interviews? Well, every interview that I do, I get the link and I post it on my website, but I actually post it twice. I post it on the daily blog, so it just runs with everything else, but it also gets posted under the interview section, and that's an icon up top of the page. Just click on that. You can see every interview I've done, for the last year and a half, or I guess the website's been open a year and a half, or not quite 2 years. I was going to say every interview I've ever done that didn't get taken down by YouTube, because there was literally millions upon millions of views that got taken down when websites got shut down, taken down. And I mean, I'm actually proud. I helped Greg Hunter, I helped Sean at SGT, I helped Dave at X22. They all got taken down, and I was one of their 3 strikes for each one of those sites. And it's funny, if you look back on it now, how, I guess, wrong or arrogant YouTube was regarding COVID. If you said anything that the CDC didn't say, if you disagreed with the CDC, you were like the Black Death. And all 3 of them asked me about the vaccine, and I just simply said, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but what I do know is if you take the vaccine, then you're the guinea pig, because they did not have time. There was no time to study the effects. So whatever the effects are, you're going to find out. And that was a strike for each of those 3 channels. And, I helped take them all down. And that was, like I said, I mean, that was millions of views. It was probably tens and tens or 100 million or who knows in all, but it was millions of views for me. That I'm disappointed that they're not up anymore, because in that time frame, or from say 2014, 15 to 2020, I was on the record for a lot of things that, as of now, turned out to be pretty right. And I took some massive shit along the way. I'm a doom and gloom porn broker, whatever. So I'm disappointed that they're taken down, because I was on the record on a lot of different points that I sounded like a lunatic then, but hey, it turned out pretty much spot on.
Yeah, you stood the test of time, and they aged well, because you were more right than wrong, and the official sources of information, so-called official, were often absolutely illogical, unscientific, and misleading people. So that's why we have you here.
And that is very kind by saying often wrong, because we live in a world, just to finish up, I guess, Dunnigan, we live in a world where we are being gaslit on every possible topic. It doesn't matter whether it's your health, whether it's your finances, virtually any type of statement out of government is a gaslighting statement. And I mean, we've just been outright lied to and bullshitted. And it's really disappointing, because I mean, I look back now, and I guess you could say from November 22nd, 1963, which happens to be my very first memory of life, Kennedy being shot, from that day forward, Americans have lived a complete lie. We've been bullshitted all the way along. And, it's kind of disheartening to be basically 65 years old and look back and say, holy shit, the whole thing was a lie.
It's what James Rawls from survivalblog.com refers to. He says, we are living in the age of deception and betrayal. Invest accordingly, relocate accordingly, and prepare accordingly. So that's what we're here about on Liberty and Finance, is helping people to be prepared so they can survive and thrive. You're a big part of that, Bill. We appreciate you always being in our corner and being there for our viewers and subscribers, and for joining us again this time on Liberty and Finance.
Thank you, Donegan.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for November 4th through November 11th, 2024, while supplies last. This week we feature the 2024 1-ounce gold UK Lion and Eagle coin, a highly limited release, available at just $99 over spot. We also have backdated silver 1-ounce Britannia at just $2.99 over spot per ounce. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.